Spirals. This town is contaminated with spirals. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's Jose here, welcoming you to another episode of Amazing Worlds, where today I am going to be discussing or introducing or reviewing, whatever you want to call it, Uzumaki, the horror comic by Japanese artist Junji Ito. Now, Junji Ito is a Japanese writer, artist, born in 1963, and he's the author of several works. He's written a few horror stories and drawn a few horror stories, but his main works are Tomi, which sort of follows an immortal girl that sort of takes the life of her followers. I haven't read that one. He also wrote Gyo, or Gyo, however it's pronounced. My Japanese is totally non-existent. Which weirdly is about some kind of weird bacteria that infest fish, and they transform fish, and fish take over the town. It is very odd. And the work in question that occupies me today, which is Uzumaki, which Uzumaki in Japanese apparently means spirals. So, originally, the manga, the horror manga, was serialized. It was published weekly over the course of just over a year in Japan. Eventually, the rights were acquired for translation, US market. It was published in 3 volumes, and eventually it was compiled into this single omnibus edition, which I strongly recommend because it's super quality hardcover edition. It's a thick book, as you can see, but you need that kind of thick, solid quality edition, and it's actually relatively cheap. Actually, it's a lot cheaper than buying something similar from European or American writers, so it's very good value for money. And it actually was nominated for an Eisner Award. So there's something here. Now, the action takes place in the fictional town of Kurozu-cho, pronunciation again, which apparently investigating means big black vortex in Japanese. So there's a reference that completely over my head when I first read the book. Now, originally, I didn't get as much out of the book on first reading because a lot of references, the work needs to be understood in the concept of framing the concept of spirals, which is where a lot of the horror is derived from, and that may be missed if you're not familiar with the concept as I originally was not. So, even thinking about it now, kind of the story itself follows a slightly sort of a spiral type narrative. So we're in this town, and we follow boy and his girlfriend, boy-girl love interest thing, and then sort of you are at the edges of the spiral. So weird things start to happen. At first, seemingly strange, weird events related to spirals. And then progressively, as you move sort of towards, the inside, the vortex of the spiral, weirder things start happening. So, all spirally related. So, a girl's long hair become sort of alive spiral things. There's a lot of body horror transformations all related with spirals, and the seemingly weird becomes the body horror, and eventually, as you reach the ending of the story, the whole thing takes on a slightly more metaphysical aspect to it. Again, related to the concept of the spiral, and it kind of all sort of makes sense. And you can and looking back on it and understanding the concept of the spiral, how the story sort of you end up in that spiraling cycle, and it's all so the physical and the metaphysical merge together. Now, I know this kind of may not make a lot of sense of what I'm saying here. But so basically, in an interview for 78 magazine, which I will leave linked below, basically the concept of Uzumaki comes from a perversion of the traditional notion, concept, understanding, symbolism of the spiral in Japanese culture, but as well across other cultures. So did a bit of digging, did a bit of research. So basically in Buddhism, the spiral represents the past, present, and future, because some sort of positive symbolism. In Celtic culture, the triskelion, the triple spiral, is a concept of birth, challenge, change, development, future. In Catholic, Christian Catholic view of the world, the spiral, the triskelion also stands for the Holy Trinity of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And even in classical Renaissance mathematics, the Fibonacci spiral, which is derived from the golden ratio of the Fibonacci sequence, it represents standards of beauty and the aesthetically pleasing, which Leonardo da Vinci used that kind of golden ratio, golden proportion in his paintings, and the shape of the canvas of the paintings that he was doing at the time. So we take this concept of the spiral as being a symbol, a mystic symbol for good, for change, and Junji Ito turned it on its head and also and changed it into something horrific. So that's where this aversion of the concept of the spiral comes from, and that's what I think people need to understand, or you need to understand when you approach this work, unlike I did the first time, and all of that flew over my head, like I said before. So in the interview for 78 magazine, even Ito said that in Japanese culture, the spiral is used in cartoons to sort of as a funny sort of thing in cartoon characters on the cheeks to represent like their gleefulness, that they're happy, that sort of thing. So again, he's perverting and changing that symbolism there. So with all of that, possibly on a if you watch this before reading the comic, you may appreciate it better than I did last time. And I wish I had known all of this before reading the story, because it makes a lot more sense now. However, my first impression when I first read it is that a lot of it isn't necessarily what I would call horror. For me, it wasn't horrific, but then we enter into a completely different discussion that I may leave for another time. Because for me, the paranormal or the supernatural isn't necessarily horrific in and of itself. I need something else. But also, that's another point of discussion, which is differences between the Western concept of horror and the Japanese concept of horror, which apparently I've done a little bit of research again. And in Western culture, we take horror to be some sort of representation, manifestation of evil that has got a cause and needs to be defeated. And you can think of Bram Stoker's Dracula, John Carpenter's The Thing, and pretty much any horror story, The Exorcist, any horror story, any horror movie where you can see it follows this kind of pattern, this kind of archetypal storytelling. Whereas in Japanese culture, there is no reason, there is no logic for the horror to be, and there isn't a need to vanquish it. The horror just happens, the horror just is, and that's kind of what you get in Uzumaki. Now, I found the story interesting enough and compelling enough that I furthered my reading into the Geo story, and I will probably pick up Tommy at some point in the future. As a final point of note, I would say actually that possibly because of Japanese writing style, you actually read the book backwards, because I presume when translating it would have been a lot more difficult as well to change the order of the pages and completely reformat everything. So you actually read the book right to left. So as I'm holding it, I'm starting from the end, so to speak, which is actually the beginning of the story, and you turn the pages to the left. Which at first is a little bit weird, because I think it's the first book I've ever read like this, but it's not complicated. You get used to it. It's all ink and pencils work. There's no color. It's all black and white. The artwork is, I think it's perfect. I think it's a perfect blend of storytelling and art here. Yeah, definitely, if you're looking for something different, and by different I mean something good as well, something that you may not be used to, I will most definitely recommend Uzumaki by Junji Ito. But anyway, this is all I have for today. Thank you ever so much for watching. If you've read Uzumaki or you're intending to, you find this helpful, please, 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 as usual, let me know. Please, 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 comment below, like, subscribe, let me know what you think, spread the message, spread the love, take loads of care, and I'll see you next time. Bye!